time to play Flip the Book. So
Cool.
basically, you've got 3 books to pick from, 1, 2, or 3,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll see how relevant it is to you.
Okay.
What book would you like?
So
1, 2, or 3?
let's go for 2.
2. And Coach can't see them, and I randomly put them on my desk, so it's just however they land. So there's no rhyme or reason to what book is going to be 1 or 2 or 3 on each episode. So could you give me a number between 1 and 188?
73.
73. And you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 paragraphs to pick from.
Third paragraph.
Third paragraph. Excellent. That's a little quote. So you need to be truthful to resolve, and you will protect your desired denial by being indifferent to the reality of your own reactions and responses. I'll give that to you again. You need to be truthful to resolve, or you will protect your desired denial by being indifferent to the reality of your own reactions and responses. I think you're trying to explain to people what their natural reactions and responses could be.
So
would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And just what came to mind there. So just a bit on my PhD. So my PhD was in mindfulness. I took a perspective from an embodied perspective of mindfulness as it relates to leadership performance. So if we just look at this concept of being mindful, I think that's where this idea of fully experiencing your potentiality comes from, because you're able to be present with whatever is arising inside, whatever is happening on the outside, but crucially without judging the experience. And so what that does is it opens up potentialities. It opens up alternatives. So rather than just being reactive and just coming out and just reacting as you typically would, you have that space, that moment in time between the stimulus and the reaction. You have that moment, that space. And if you can capture that space, then you can see not only your own experience, but the world in a different way.
Yeah. Well, when I write about reactions, I say that they're often fueled by your emotions. You know, you're not thinking, you're disengaged from your thought process and your actual awareness, and you're just, emotionally reacting. Whereas responding is what you've just said there, is that you've taken that time to work out where you sit, what feels right for you, what resonates with you, and you respond from there. That's the way I look at it. And when you're working with people, do you find their desire to hold on to their denial is one of the first hurdles you've got for them to sort of come back and being able to be, for a want of a better word, more in tune with their authentic self?
Absolutely, because I think you move towards what is familiar, even if the familiar is something that's destructive. So you have to kind of start there first, the recognition that this is where my problems arise. But sometimes what people really need is an opportunity to have some space, to not be engaged with it all the time. And I think that's where this idea of being present is really powerful, is that you can be fully with what is emerging without having to create a story or a narrative around it. And what I find fascinating there anyway is when we talk about this idea of emotions, and we may not have time to go into that, but emotions is a construct. We think emotions happen to us, but they don't. We create those emotions. And those emotions are created through many different ways. One, of course, is how we were brought up, the culture that we were brought up in, the environment that we find ourselves in, and just how we've invariably started to react to certain situations. That's why oftentimes very similar experiences invoke very similar emotional reactions. But if we understand that we are the creator of our emotions, that puts us in a very powerful place, because that means we can uncreate that reaction. We can change it, because an emotion isn't this hardwired circuit in your brain. You don't have a fear circuit and a happy circuit and a sad circuit. The reason you're feeling fear is because somewhere in your life, You created that narrative around that. And anything that comes up in your life that looks similar to the original thing that you said that is fear will invoke the same response. And said a different way, maybe to make it easier for people to understand, is that I can have two people both having all the same physiological changes before they go onto the stage to give a speech. One person will identify all those physiological changes as excitement. Another person will take those same physiological changes and call it fear, because they have a fear of speaking to other people, and especially in front of a large audience. The key element there is the physiological, the interoceptive state is exactly the same. The only difference is the narrative that's being put on top of it that then creates this excitement for one person and fear for another, which speaks to what I just said. And even in the Buddhist tradition, they're very much in line with that idea that emotions are constructed. You construct your emotions, which again, like I said earlier, the beautiful thing about that is you can deconstruct it. And the only way that you can deconstruct it is, first of all, to be present and have that space to recognize it as it arises in that moment, but then not to engage with it in the way that you typically would by justifying it. The reason I feel this way is because of this. If you can leave that out just for a little bit, you can start to see the transient nature of that emotion, and that it comes and it goes. And you start to understand the deeper connection to your history and where that initially came from. And we talk about, for example, trauma. I am very well aware now that many of my reactions to situations come about because of what happened to me as a child. And the fact that I know that means that I can change my behavior in that very moment. Now, do I always get it right? Of course not, right? But the difference is, what would have been something that I would have held onto for hours, for days in a negative cycle, I'm now able to let go in a very short period of time. And to me, that's a victory, right? So where something would have happened before and would have set me off into a negative spiral for days, now maybe it's only an hour. Well, that's a huge accomplishment.
Oh, it's massive.
Because I think we don't always take that into account of how our trauma, especially as children, is so deeply ingrained within our hardwiring, not just in our brains, but throughout our entire body. And it's a very difficult thing to break. I grew up not trusting anybody, and my trust issues came from the fact of what my mother did to me, the very person I should be able to trust. So then it makes sense that I would be distrustful of everybody else. And coming back to, again, what I said earlier, is that when I was growing up and when I was exhibiting what I would consider now not the most appropriate behaviors, nobody ever once said to me, "What happened to you? What's wrong with you? There must be something wrong with you. Oh, you got a chemical imbalance or something, you got low serotonin." That's what we get told, right? So I go in, this is the funny thing too, funny and sad. I can go into a doctor, and I've been down that road. I can go into a doctor's room or a psychiatrist's room, and I can give a prescription of what is wrong with me. These are the things that's wrong with me. And that psychiatrist will say, "Oh, you're depressed. You need this medication." And then I can go around the corner to another psychiatrist, say the exact same things. "Oh, no, you have bipolar. You need this medication." Which is kind of interesting, right? Is that you could go to 5 different medical doctors and get 5 different conclusions of what's wrong with you. And so then it's not uncommon for people to have a particular thing that they're struggling with and to have 5 different diagnoses. It can't be so many things wrong. But nowhere in any of that, like I keep saying, nowhere in any of those experiences that I had did once ever did that medical doctor say, "What happened to you?" Like, really understand what happened to you. And so I think much of our trauma stems from that. And then I keep coming back to what I said in the beginning. Now we're in the system that is telling us unconsciously that we need to be competing, we need to be hustling. I can't stand that idea of, especially in the entrepreneurial world, you got to hustle. People posting, photographs of their watch at 4 a.m. in the morning. I'm up when everybody else is sleeping. This kind of stuff, right?
Right.
And so you never feel good enough. You never feel that you could ever meet whatever this criteria actually is. And so you fall into despair. And then you've got trauma, and then the world has got trauma, and then we wonder why we're in this sinking pit and we feel terrible. You know, I want to tell people,
Yeah.
if this is maybe a positive message, is with my realization, is that there's actually nothing wrong with you. You're not lazy. You're not stupid. You're not working. It's not that you're not working hard enough. It's that the entire system is against you. And so that's what you're fighting. And so it comes back to what I'm advocating, is that find a way to go against the status quo. Now, when I say that, I do not mean in any way, shape, or form in some kind of malicious way or illegally, because that's not what I'm saying. You should always ask yourself before you do something, I'm going to do this because I want to be authentic. But in doing this, does this in any way, shape, or form endanger another human life, a human animal life, or an animal for that matter, or the planet? And if I can honestly say that it's not, then go ahead and do it. And that's what I mean by bucking the status quo. Because every time you do that, you feel alive. And that to me is important, you know, because that gives you that sense of getting back your innate authenticity back, at least for a moment. And that's a powerful place to be.
And I think the big thing to be able to do that is actually start working on resolving your reaction to other people's judgment. Because as soon as you get to the point where you go, right, this is me, judge away, do your thing, but do it over there and I'll just keep moving the way I want to, all of a sudden they're actually gravitating to you because they feel that authenticity. It's fascinating. If you're in a room full of people, you can tell the authentic people because the other people are coming up and they want hugs. They want to spend time talking to you. They want that because we're attracted to it. So this fear of being judged and ostracized and shunned, you'll get that, but that they were never going to be part of your party anyway, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
They were always they're stuck in their stuff. So it'll sort of let you gravitate to the people that are interested,
I think,
and be interested in them.
I think there's also an opportunity there to have empathy. I feel that the reason people judge is because that's the learned behavior that the system requires. It comes back to this hyper-competitive state that we're all in. That's why we judge everybody else. So in a way, I feel sorry for those people that they feel the need to judge in order for them to feel validated.
Well, it's an expression of their fear of not being good enough.
Yeah.
And the sad part of, we are advertised, you're not good enough unless you have this, or you've got to have the house that says to the world that you're successful, or you've got to have the car or the partner or whatever it is. So we're telling everybody that you've got to have these boxes ticked and you've got to have this perfect, and don't worry, we'll still judge you for it because we want you to feel bad about yourself so you'll stay as a consumer. So that's the society we live in. But if we come out of that, if we allow ourselves to, okay, if you're stuck there, okay, I'll keep being me. You'll work it out when you're ready too. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I love it. Sounds good.
Thank you, Coach. I've enjoyed this conversation, and thank you for sharing time and conversing with me.
You're more than welcome.